So hello everyone. So thank you for being here today or being present uh, to just hear more about this topic that I'm going to discuss here today. So the title is Staying Calm in Spite of Your Circumstances or Maintaining Good Emotional Health. And I am a life skills trainer. I'll tell you more about life skills now. So life skills was established last year by two psychotherapists, Dr. Des Rice and Bridget Rice. The purpose of life skills is to provide young people with coping skills for life. Des taught these skills in businesses for over 20 years, very successfully. And he and Bridget decided that they would try to teach them to kids, teachers, and parents in primary schools, and that worked really, really well. With COVID, they then decided to do online webinars for adults like myself and young people. But they now also empower others to teach these skills to young people, like teachers, youth workers, or like myself, a volunteer in a youth club. So I'm one of the people that they have trained. So what are we going to be discussing today? How persistent worry, anxiety, and frustration can take control of our lives. And we don't realize it a lot of the time. We think we're not worried and we're not anxious or frustrated. And then how this shows up in real life. And that can range from just uneasiness, butterflies, not thinking clearly, sweating, or poor sleep, to overwhelm, anxiety, and panic. So it's really important that we're going to explain to you so that you understand how all of these manifestations have a common cause, and so that the same methods of control, that's what's important. Understanding it is useful, but knowing how to control it is the big one. And then what are these tools? Well, they're aerobic exercise, 7-11 breathing, and muscle relaxation. I'll explain how and why they work, because when people understand that, they're more likely to use the tools. And then we'll explain why there's benefits to studying, sport, clear thinking, mental health. So some facts and stats. So 1 in 4 of us is seriously impacted by emotional overload in any one year. And we can all feel minor symptoms of this at times. Unable to think clearly, having a dry mouth, pre-exam or pre-match butterflies, sweaty hands. But those can, if you don't know how to deal with them or what explains them, can move on. And you can end up like some people, and most family members have a friend or a family member who is severely impacted with anxiety or depression. So whether it's mild or severe or short or long term, we can learn to control it. That's a promise by using century-old tools verified by modern brain science. So even though those tools are centuries, millennia old, they're verified by modern brain science. And then our use of the tools eliminates 85% of emotional well-being issues, leads to increased well-being, clearer thinking, and better sports performance. Those are some facts. And today you will learn these tools. And if you practice them, it'll make a profound difference to your life. So what do we mean by emotional overload? Well, emotional overload occurs when any pressure or accumulation of pressures exceeds an individual's coping skills. And that's why sometimes some things can cause emotional overload for one person and not for other. The other may have better coping skills, and they may have better coping skills for that particular event. So what are some causes of emotional overload for young people? Well, there are plenty of them. Could be relationship problems. The idea of fitting in, looking good. We all want to do that, not realizing that if we stay calm, we'll fit in naturally. Too much social media, a huge thing nowadays. Not enough exercise. Studying too much or studying not enough. Perfectionism, having to get everything right. Money problems. Accommodation issues. Health illness. Family problems. Overuse, too much drinking, gambling. Fear of public speaking, anger control, social anxiety, sport anxiety. All of these can cause a similar outcome. Poor sleep, poor diet, gossip, and just being a worrier. But you can learn to control the impact of all of these things today. And this is just another example of some of those. Too much time alone, too much screen time, not enough studying or too much, no clear goals. So you're not clear where you're going, and it's really important to have clear goals. Money problems, possibly linked to gambling, social exclusion or emotional bullying. And we can all be at the result of that. It can be me today, somebody else tomorrow. But it has an impact. Too much social media, a huge issue. Physical bullying, poor planning, too much to do. Really important to plan stuff, get it written down, get a schedule. Our brain craves it. Sport anxiety, anger control. So the person on the left, difficulty controlling their anger, and then as a result, the person on the right is bullied. Body image issues, we take those so seriously. And yet what's more important is to stay calm and centered and be with people. And then rouse at home. Of course, they have an impact on us, but we can stay calm and centered and look after ourselves. So then we have these issues, and we not only have them, but we worry about them. And that adds further to the stress. It is no useful purpose worrying, but it's very natural because it's just a misuse of the imagination. And if we stay calm, we can start to control our imagination and tell it to calm down. The secret, calm down, think of the next step you need to take and take action. So whatever it is that's to be dealt with, if you stay calm, you can think of the next step and take it. And there are always those there who will help you and support you. So what it boils down to is there'll always be circumstances in life, and some of those can be quite complex, and that's around today with the coronavirus. You need to learn the coping skills to stay calm in spite of those. Because if the circumstances exceed the coping skills, it impacts our well-being, as we're about to discuss now. It's really important to improve our coping skills. So what are the indicators of poor emotional health? And we've already mentioned some of those. It may be just simply not thinking clearly, a bit scatterbrained, less effective, not achieving all you would like to, being impatient, irritable, or angry. And then you may start, to become preoccupied and worried. You may have some sleep problems, maybe finding it difficult to cope and deal with life's challenges. Or you may even have some symptoms, and we talked about those earlier, like a dry mouth, recurrent headaches, butterflies, sweating, pre-exam anxiety, pre-football match or game anxiety. And then we can end up avoiding normal activities because we feel a little bit anxious. And that can progress. If we don't deal with it, it can progress to feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, even panic attacks. Feeling down, low mood, unmotivated or depressed. And then, if things get too bad, we get addicted to ease the pain. But all of these have the same source. But they can start off being very mild, and they can end up being quite severe. So the more coping skills you have, the more likely it is that you can keep it at the top of that rather than at the bottom. And that's one of the main objectives of life skills. And what are the indicators of good emotional health and well-being? Well, mostly coping well and enjoying life. We never do it all the time. It's not possible. But mostly able to think clearly and handle life's challenges, decide what's the next best thing to do. Creating and achieving goals that are important to you. It's really important to have goals and to achieve them. And you don't have to be comparing yourself with somebody else, but compare yourself with who you were yesterday. And then you can achieve goals and get the benefit of these great hormones that surge when we create and achieve goals. Having a reasonable sense of confidence, self-belief, and enthusiasm. So you can do that if your emotional health is good. Enjoying the company of others, which is a very natural thing to do. And sleeping well. All indicators of good emotional health and well-being. And of course, you're then free from addiction because you don't need to be easing the pain. So how our brain and mind and emotions react to stressful circumstances? How do they set us up and prime us for these symptoms? Well, it's all controlled by our survival nervous system. There are two components to that. One called the sympathetic nervous system, or it can be referred to as the fight or flight nervous system. The other one is called the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest nervous system. Now, fight and flight were essential for survival because when we were in the jungle, there was a lot of danger and a lot of risk there. And so this fight or flight response was really important that we had that to fight off danger. And then the parasympathetic takes over when the danger is past and we calm down. Now, although we're no longer in the jungle or living in caves or wherever we lived whenever we were thousands of years ago, our brain is still programmed this way. And although they were essential for survival, we still have these fight or flight programmed into us. And so in order to fight off danger, we have the emotion of anger. Now, it's not really justified nowadays because we're unlikely to be killed by another tribe or another animal, but we still get angry. All of us do. We may call it nice names like frustrated or pissed off, upset, annoyed, sulking. You may huff, but they're all manifestations, or malicious gossip. They're all manifestations of anger. And that shows up in us, and there's a consequence for us, as there is for the flight mode, which is driven by fear. So in the jungle, we either go to fight the danger or run away from it. We're still programmed that way. And so we may not say that we're afraid, and we may have other words to describe it, as shown here, like nervous, anxious, cautious, tense, worried, timid. So unfortunately, our brain still responds as if we're cavemen to coronavirus, bullying, social media likes or dislikes, relationship issues, upsets at work or college. And there's a number of things that can really pre-program us to become upset. And it's because we're primed for anger and fear. And our brain still responds that way in modern day life. But this priority that our brain has for fight or flight, it tricks us. So just a little bit about our brain. So we have a bit of our brain that we share with reptiles. It's called the amygdala. In very early days, it was a very primitive amygdala, but we have that when we share it with snakes. And then whenever our brain detects some risk or danger, it produces an emotion. And then if we're very lucky as human beings, we can think about that. And we would like to think we spend most of our time and most of our life in our thinking brain. But unfortunately, that's not often the case because everything that we see, hear, or imagine in life is assessed, first of all, by the amygdala for risk to our lives. And that can, in a very short period of time, a 50th of a second, it can produce an emotion. So if it detects risk, be it real or imaginary, it produces the emotion of fear or anger or sadness or guilt or whatever the appropriate emotion is. In a 50th of a second, you can become fearful or angry or sad or guilty. And when that happens, our body prepares for fight or flight. And what it does is it floods the system with adrenaline and cortisol to prepare us for fight or flight. And so our blood supply all goes to our lungs and our heart and our muscles. And it stops going to our thinking brain. It stops going to our digestive system and our immune system because as far as our brain's concerned, we're about to fight the tiger or the other tribe in a 50th of a second. And that can happen at any time. Because this amygdala, it's like an oversensitive smoke alarm. It goes off like the house where the alarm goes off even though there's no smoke. And it can be triggered, the amygdala can be triggered by school issues, college issues, coronavirus prevention measures, fear of the disease to self or others, money issues, not meeting your friends, huge thing. Friends let you down, it triggers the fight or flight response. And the amygdala fires off in a 50th of a second, producing either fear or anger, the fight or flight mode. And it doesn't matter which it is, your body produces adrenaline and cortisol. We stop thinking clearly and we're in survival mode. And it doesn't matter whether that's a real or an imaginary stimulus. Our body has been triggered day and daily, hundreds, if not thousands of times a day into this fight or flight response. And we have to learn how to calm down because there are serious consequences to this. What are those consequences? So what's the impact of persistent fear, anger, and worry on our lives? First of all, we're going to talk about the ability to think clearly, which is really important. Got to be able to think clearly. However, when we have a low level of emotion, as shown by this red dot on this graph, our thinking brain or our higher cortex works well. So the amygdala is not activated, we're calm and relaxed, and the thinking brain works well. However, when that brain is triggered by some sort of something going on in life, like the things we talked about earlier, and there's a high level of emotion, if there's fear, anger, sadness, or guilt, our thinking brain stops working. The amygdala that we share with reptiles takes over, and we don't think straight. In fact, what we say is that the amygdala hijacks our thinking brain. And you know this to be true because you've probably had to deal with people who are angry and they don't think clearly. You don't think clearly if you're angry, nor if you're fearful. And you know, if you go into that exam that we talked about, if these pre-exam nerves, your brain can turn to porridge. It's important to be able to calm it down. Because most people are much brighter than they think. But very often they're limited by this amygdala hijack. And the reason that happens is that when we lived in the jungle and there was danger or perceived danger, if there was a rustling in the bushes over there, right, was it a good idea to be standing around wondering, is this a large animal or a small one, or should I run? Or no, you didn't want to be thinking. Your intuition took over and you either ran or you fought. So our thinking brain stops working when we're highly emotionally aroused. The amygdala hijacks that thinking brain, so we can't think straight. We're illogical. And you may be only partially illogical. But you know that happens. Sometimes you're trying to do stuff and your brain turns to porridge. It can't think. We can even feel anxious, irritable, frustrated. It can be an overwhelm. And you may even have butterflies, palpitations, even panic. And you can learn to control that. And there are much more symptoms than just your ability to think clearly, as this implies. So first you can't think straight, a sense of confusion, maybe overwhelm, butterflies and palpitations. You may be inefficient, irritable, angry, blaming others. You may be not sleeping well. And very often that's because we're dreaming in excess. When we're highly emotionally aroused, we dream more. We go into this state of dream sleep or REM sleep, which should only be 2 hours a night, and we may dream up to 4 or 5 hours. So we don't have enough restorative sleep, so we wake up knackered. And so we're depleted, we're tired, can be exhausted. And it's all due to this fight or flight response going on in our lives and worry. Our immune system becomes inefficient. Muscle tension, headaches, chest tightness, breathlessness, because we're holding ourselves tight and tense. We have to learn to relax those muscles. Our digestive upsets can happen. Diarrhea, constipation, IBS, or ulcers can all be impacted by this, and we can learn to control it. Overwhelm, anxiety, anger, panic. If you don't learn to control the earlier, simpler symptoms, and that can progress to depression, which has really happened whenever people don't get enough rest or sleep. And that can then end up leading us more likely to become addicted to ease of pain. And these are all due to the same source, all due to the brain being in survival mode, producing adrenaline and cortisol for fight or flight. So they all have the same source, and they all have as their basis the same control systems, which we're about to talk about. So what can we do to control this? Well, as I said, this has all been triggered by the sympathetic nervous system, getting us prepared for fight or flight, even though we're not in the jungle. So we have to learn to stimulate this parasympathetic. We're being fooled that we're still in the jungle. We have got to fool the brain back again and calm it down. So what do we have to do? We have to stimulate this rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system, and stay calm in spite of our circumstances. There'll always be circumstances. But if we learn how to stay calm, we can learn to control all of these symptoms. So how do we do that? The first thing is to realize it's just adrenaline overload or adrenaline toxicity. You're not losing it. You're not going crazy. It's just too much adrenaline, too much cortisol. You learn to calm it down. Number one. Number two, you're not your emotions. You're not anxious, angry, frustrated, depressed, even though that's what the English language tells us. But you're not your emotions. They do not define you. The English language says, I am anxious. I am depressed. I am an angry person. No, you're not. Gaelic language is a much better way of expressing it. Hunger is on me. Depression is on me. Anger is on me. And I'm not a Gaelic speaker, but I can tell you that that's the way it says. Hunger is on me. It doesn't say I am hungry. It says hunger is on me. Depression is on me. And if it's on you, the beautiful thing is it can go off you. It doesn't define you. You're not depressed. You're not anxious. You're not angry. You can learn to control all of these. Okay. So because they're on you, you can get them off you. So the English language version is wrong, and the Gaelic language is much more correct. It's more in keeping with what actually happens to our emotions. So there's two things that can help to calm down. The third one is 2.5 to 3 hours aerobic exercise per week. It is hugely important. Why? Because when you do that aerobic exercise, it creates emotional and mental balance, principally by raising serotonin, which is the happiness hormone, as high as antidepressants. Most people who are depressed do not need to be taking antidepressants. They need to get out and get exercise. They also get the endorphin surge, so the feel-good factor. And the exercise uses the adrenaline for what it's designed for movement. So it's really important to do this. But you need to become very specific and create goals and write them down. It could be power walking or jogging or running or cycling. It doesn't matter as long as you're using your muscles. Then you have to decide when you're going to do it, whether it be morning, lunchtime, or evening, and put it in your diary. Make sure you do it. And then would you do 20 minutes a day? I have some people who do an hour at the weekends and 3.5 hours through the week. Different ways of doing it. Make sure you have the right gear, because you don't want to be put off by the weather. The weather's just weather. So when you say I don't have time, I promise you, you have time. Because if you do it, make the time, you will be more efficient. You will achieve more with less effort. So that's 3 things now we can do to control these emotions. The other one is to relax your muscles by doing shakeouts and stretching while standing, that's one, or just sitting and tightening your muscles, then relaxing. So I'm going to demonstrate this to you now. So the first one I'm going to do is the shakeouts and stretching. So the way to do that is to stand up and stretch on your tiptoes, stretch to the ceiling, and then begin to shake out your muscles so that you become like a rag doll. So I'm just going to stand up so you can see that better. Okay, so standing up, stretch to the ceiling on your tiptoes, stretch your face, everything, and then shake out your arms and your legs. Stretch again. And then shake out. It's really important to do a good stretch so you feel the tension, and then do the shake out so you notice your muscles becoming relaxed. Okay, so that's one thing to do. And if you can, it's a really good thing to do that 3 to 4 times a day for a minute or 2, just to relax your muscles, relieve the tension. You can do another one, which is just to tense your fists up like that, and your arms, keep breathing, your upper arms and shoulders, your chest, keep breathing, your tummy, hips and thighs, right down to your calves, ankles, feet and toes. Tense, 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 tense. Hold, really tense, keep breathing. Notice the tension, and now relax all those muscles. And feel the relaxation spreading through your body. And when our muscles are relaxed, the feedback to our brain is that everything's calm, even if it's not. So those are 2 good exercises to do. That's the The sitting intention you can do sitting at your desk. You don't have to have your hands up in front of you like I did. You can just stay calm and relaxed, tension all your muscles and relax. So now we have 4 things that we've learned. The next one is 7-11 breathing, at least 3 to 4 times per day. So let me tell you more about that. And this is, I'm never quite sure whether 7-11 breathing or the exercise is the more important. For some people, it's the breathing. For some people, it's the exercise. But I promise you that I've taught this to people, a lot of people, and it really makes a profound difference. So what does it mean, 7-11 breathing? Well, it's diaphragmatic breathing. It's breathing down into your abdomen, not the top of your chest where we normally breathe into. And breathing in slowly for a count of 7 through the nose, and breathing out slower for a count of 11 through the nose. So the out breath is a third longer than the in breath. So I'm going to demonstrate that to you now. So first of all, so normally we don't breathe down in here to our abdomen. We breathe up the top of our chest, and we only fill up about a third, best half of our lungs. But when you breathe down into the bottom of your lungs and imagine your tummy filling up with air and pressing out, then it makes a huge difference. So let me demonstrate normal breathing first. So this hand won't move much and my shoulders move. I'll do that again. This hand hardly moves, my shoulders move. Whereas abdominal breathing is completely different. Watch this. My shoulders stay steady. When we breathe down here into the bottom of our lungs, the diaphragm relaxes. We fill up the bottom of our lungs first and then fill up the rest. And that stimulates this calming down the rest and digest nervous system. So I'll do now. So 7-11, I'll demonstrate the second part of it. So we breathe in for a count of 7, out for 11, usually through the nose, but because I'm talking, I'll do it through my mouth. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, So it's a hugely important tool. The out breath, a third longer than the in breath. In for 7, out for 11. If you find it hard to do 7-11, sometimes people find it easier to do in for 5, out for 8. It doesn't matter as long as the out breath is a third longer than the in breath. And you breathe down into your abdomen, and you can't force this. You force it doesn't work. You've got to learn how to do it gently. And a good way to do that is after this session to lie down on the floor or on your bed and put a book or your phone on your tummy and practice breathing in and out. And when you're doing it well, your tummy will rise up and down, the book will rise up and down. So doing this for 1 to 2 minutes, 4 to 6 times a day helps us to stay calm. And once you learn to do it, you don't have to have your hand there to notice it or your phone or anything. You can just do it sitting at your desk when you're working. And it's a real great benefit. Why? Because as you breathe in through your nose, nitric oxide is produced in the nasal cavities, the sinuses. And this nitric oxide has a magical component. It ensures more oxygen is absorbed in through your lungs. And even more important, it gets to your tissues, right out to all your vital organs. And that's what happens when someone's having a panic attack. They're not getting enough oxygen to their tissues. So this exercise can totally prevent even panic attacks. But more importantly, it helps more oxygen to get to tissues, so you feel even better. You become better sports people. You can think clearly. You can do exams better. And so that's one of the benefits of the nitric oxide. And the other one is the relaxation of the diaphragm and filling up the bottom of the lungs hacks the vagus nerve, calming us down, stimulating the rest and digest nervous system. You're much more clear. So now we have got a huge number of 5 things that we can do to calm ourselves down. So if we do the breathing and the muscle relaxation at least 4 times a day, for 2 minutes, it can make you relaxed and focused. Some people do it for 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. You have to find a way that works for you. And you can do it anywhere during the day. They're the essential foundation tools for controlling your fear, anger, and sadness, and becoming much more clear-minded, better at sports, better at work, better at studying, and much more relaxed. But it requires practice. In order to become this way, you've got to practice these tools day and daily and become really good at them. And there's some other things you can do. Less social media and screen time. That's a big thing. It gives you more spare mental capacity to deal with life. Get a good night's sleep, and that comes mainly from doing your exercise and doing your breathing and muscle relaxation. You can even do 7-11 breathing during the night should you wake up. Have conversations and fun with others. It's really important to be engaged in human activities. Prayer, meditation, and mindfulness all make a profound difference. And have daily written goals and schedule. Schedule in everything for your day. Have a time for doing things. You think you want to have an easy life, you don't. You want to be scheduled and have goals. So, which of the above are you committing to doing? It's a good idea to write them down, and we'll not stop to write them down just now, but we will at the end of the session. Just see which of those you could do, which of those you're going to commit to. And there's huge benefits to this. It won't get rid of all the issues in your life. Be fool to suggest that. But what it does is, it gives you the ability to stay calm and think clearly. And that way you can use your imagination to create and achieve goals and solve problems, rather than using your imagination to worry. You sleep better, dream less, and therefore feel rested and alert. You have a fitter immune system. You have less muscle tension, headaches, chest tightness, breathlessness. And it helps to control overwhelm, anxiety, anger, panic, and depression. Really simple, but really important tools. Please use them. Thank you very much.